Okay, let's stand for the pledge round 2. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's bow our heads for a prayer. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for bringing us all together safely today. Many of us have come from far, and we want to bless those who have places to return to. And God, we want to thank you for the opportunity to live in the freest country in the world, in a place where we can get together like this and talk about policy and fight for our constituents and the citizens of this great country. It is in your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So I want to thank all the industrial leaders who showed up, as well as the legislators from Virginia, New Jersey, especially Pennsylvania. Really want to thank Pennsylvania thank you for keeping the lights on. My name is Matt Morgan. I'm chairman of the Maryland Freedom Caucus, and we're here today to do our Powering Our Mid-Atlantic Energy hearing. And this is the second hearing that we've had. The first one was had up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and thank you for inviting us for that. And that meeting yielded some very good results. Pennsylvania withdrew from RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And yeah, that was great. And you all codified that as well. So we're here to try to provide some solutions, some political clarity to the energy crisis that we're facing, not only in Maryland, but as in the region. Many of our constituents have been faced with skyrocketing bills, and I feel that the politics kind of put us in this situation with the lack of energy production. And also programs like RGGI that discourage people from building more energy plants, as well as, how can I say, misguided fees like the Maryland Empower fee. Maryland Freedom Caucus last year put out a 4-point plan where we believe there's a lot of solutions. We urge other states and people in Maryland as well to take a look at this. Energy affordability seems to be the buzzword of the day, but we've been talking about this problem for many years. And it looks like the chickens have finally come home to roost, with us being out of energy production. So with that, I'd like to kick it over to our panel expert. Delegate Brian Chisholm has done an unbelievable job putting this together. He is him and Delegate Fisher, I would say, are our two energy experts in our caucus. So I'm going to kick it over to him and tell him thank you one more time for putting this together. And the meeting's yours, Brian.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to Annapolis. Obviously, some of you guys have never been here before. You walk around on the streets. Those are the same streets that George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin have walked. In fact, in the State House, there's the dome, and we do still have a lightning rod. It's called the Franklin Rod, named after him because of his electrical engineering. There are some rumors that some on the left want to call that a fossil fuel generator and throw a RGGI tax on it, but we'll be fighting that. In all seriousness, I know you have other things to do with your Friday afternoons, but I want to thank you all for being here. We greatly appreciate it. I think that everybody in this room and just about everybody in the Mid-Atlantic now understands what a serious crossroads that we're at. People's bills are going through the roof, and that's why it was so vitally important for us to bring all of you here today. So our objective is very simple. One, we want to clearly identify with facts and data what the real situation is right now, with the reliability, with the grid, with the affordability, with the supply, with the demand. Number two, we want to ask as legislators from this panel of experts, what can we do to help facilitate real solutions? You guys are looking at the very technical stuff. We need to be the ones to get the policy out. But I want to kind of reverse engineer this because I think everybody now understands that for far too often, people are like, well, we'll just wait to see what the legislation does, and we'll react. That has been a failure, an absolute failure. We need to start to get out and take the narrative back with truth and facts, because it's been stolen from us. And now people are paying the price. So our goal is to provide transparency and real solutions to the public that are being crushed by these bills. So when I tried to put this panel together, I'm like, I need the people that can really describe and are on the front lines of understanding where we are. I'm very proud of the panel we put together. We will be hearing from them in a couple minutes, but what I'd like to do, just to get us started really quickly, and I'm going to start over to my right with David Rowe from Pennsylvania. If you can have everybody just say your name and where you represent quickly, that would be great, and then we'll go back around, and then one person from each state can give a few words on where they think their state is. You want to go ahead and start, David?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. My name is David Roy. I have the privilege of representing the 85th Legislative District in central Pennsylvania, which covers Union, Snyder, Juniata, and Mifflin counties.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm Kristen Marcel. I'm a state representative for the 178th District, which is a section of Bucks County. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Craig Williams from Delaware and Chester counties, just south of Philadelphia.
Representative Brian Rosal from Westmoreland County, representing the 56th District in Pennsylvania.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Eric Nelson from Westmoreland County, the 57th District in Pennsylvania.
Delegate Jay Jacobs, I represent District 36, Cecil, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Caroline counties in the state of Maryland.
Maryland State Delegate Tom Hutchinson, I represent the mid-shore of the eastern shore of Maryland.
Delegate Steve Aarons, District 36, Kent, Queen Anne, Cecil, Caroline counties.
I'm Delegate Todd Moore, I represent 29C, which is parts of St. Mary's and Calvert County.
Delegate Barry Beecham, District 38B, Wycomico County.
I'm Marcy Mastillo. I represent the 11th District of Pennsylvania, which is Butler, Pennsylvania.
I'm Barb Gleim. I represent the 199th District, which is South Central Pennsylvania, in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Thank you to our hosts. I'm State Representative Robert Ledbetter, representing all of beautiful Columbia County, the 109th Legislative District.
Josh Dale, Southwestern Pennsylvania.
Assemblyman Greg Meyer, representing the 9th Legislative District of New Jersey, which is 19 towns in southern Ocean County, from the Pines of Manchester to the beautiful shores of Island Beach State Park and Long Beach Island.
Thank you for having us. I'm Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia. I represent District 24, that is the most rural part of New Jersey, northwestern New Jersey, representing Sussex, Morris, and Warren counties.
Good afternoon, I'm Senator Steve Hershey, represent District 36, Upper Eastern Shore, and also the Senate Minority Leader.
Good afternoon, I'm Delegate Ryan Aronke. I represent District 7A, which is Eastern Baltimore County.
Delegate Kathy Shalega, Maryland, Baltimore County.
Delegate Mark Fisher, District 27C, Calvert County. Delegate Mark Fisher, District 27C, Calvert County. I actually represent the county that has Constellation's nuclear power plant, and we also have the liquefaction natural gas export plant, which is Cove Point.
Delegate Lauren Arkin, Harford County District 7B, and we will pass it back to Representative Rowe. Thank you. I also wanted to recognize that we do have two members joining us from Zoom, Representative Rapp, Chairwoman of the Health Committee from the 65th Legislative District, and Representative Kate Klunk, Chairwoman of the Children and Youth Committee from the 169th Legislative District. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to represent or mention that my district mate, Latoya Quingolo, Quingolo is in the back. And I also want to mention that Mike Weber from Virginia, they are in session. They would like to be here, but they couldn't make it work virtually. But he wanted to let us know that he's here in support. West Virginia has been contacting us as well, not just to steal half of Western Maryland, but they want to be part of this. And I think we'll probably move towards that soon. So right now what I'd like to do is I'm going to go to Pennsylvania and have somebody from Pennsylvania make a quick opening statement on where you are with your state, and then we'll move on to New Jersey, and we'll finish with Maryland.
Well, Well, thank you very much, Delegate Chisholm, for having us, for all of the Marylanders for inviting us here today. I want to especially thank my colleagues from Pennsylvania for making the long drive here, our friends from New Jersey as well. I know our friends from Virginia wanted to be here, but unfortunately they're kicking off their session. So I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to be here. This multi-state dialogue has really been intentional from the start, because we've all learned very quickly that energy policy does not respect the borders of state lines. When we last gathered, last Harrisburg in October, we were, at least in Pennsylvania, in a very different place. As Delegate Chisholm referenced, and Delegate Morgan as well, Pennsylvania is still actively discussing our participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. For those who are watching, if you're not sure what that means, it's just a tax on energy. That's what it is, plain and simple. For at least Pennsylvania, it was about $1 billion tax on energy generators that had chased away any new thermal generation, and we haven't seen new thermal generation since 2019, because that sword of Damocles was hanging over the heads of our generators. It was impacting families, employers, industries that would otherwise have wanted to move to Pennsylvania, but that RGGI tax just scared off any potential we had for true growth in the energy sector. But since then, thanks in part to the excellent work of the Energy Alliance we put together here, we have fortunately, through a very protracted budgetary negotiation, we were able to finally say goodbye to RGGI in Pennsylvania. And we are excited today that this hearing is going to help us build on that momentum. Because Pennsylvania is an energy powerhouse, where we are responsible for exporting 20% of the power to the PJM grid that includes 13 states. And this region, as we all know, is continually consuming more power than the region itself is able to produce. In Pennsylvania, we do have the capacity to generate and export the energy to keep the grid stable. But unfortunately, political agendas, misled energy policies, burdensome regulations, and endless amounts of permitting delays. Because of that, we have a constrained supply, and those costs are impacting ratepayers across the grid, including New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. We believe in Pennsylvania that we have a responsibility to advocate for energy policies that protect reliability and affordability, not just for us, but for all of our neighbors in the PJM grid. So I'm grateful for our testifiers for being here today. I'm grateful for our hosts. And I look forward to a productive discussion that will reflect the seriousness of this moment in history and the shared responsibility we have to get this right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David. Before we move on to New Jersey, I do want to recognize Mark Brown in the back. He is here with Congressman Andy Harris's office. The Congressman would like to be here, but he could not make it, but we really appreciate his support. New Jersey.
Thank you so much for having us. It's great to see all of you again. Our friends from Pennsylvania, thank you for the power you provide. Well, your contribution is not lost on New Jersey. New Jersey's here today because rising energy prices, transmission constraints are no longer an abstract policy problem for us. They're showing up in our real economy. We have our entire business sector, restaurants, manufacturers, food processors, warehouses, farms, are watching electricity become one of their fastest growing costs, with tighter margins, delayed investments, fewer new hires, and in some cases, companies are quietly leaving our state. And this is what happens when a state loses control of its energy supply and becomes dependent on a constrained regional grid. New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew said it plainly this week. New Jersey has engineered its own energy crisis. This is of our own making, and he is correct. Under our outgoing governor, Phil Murphy, he shut down 6 power plants while demand kept rising from electrification, data centers, and population growth. Even today in New Jersey, nuclear and natural gas still provide more than 90% of our electricity, yet reliable plants were allowed to close with no replacement in place nor in sight. That forced New Jersey to rely more heavily on imported power across our already shared congested PJM transmission lines. When you do that, you lose price control. We pay congestion charges, we pay higher capacity prices, and businesses in New Jersey pay the price. So instead of securing dependable replacement power, Murphy bet the state on offshore wind, and on one company in particular, Ørsted. Ørsted was supposed to deliver Ocean Wind 1 and Ocean Wind 2, more than 1,100 megawatts of new power that New Jersey was counting on to stabilize our prices and relieve transmission bottlenecks. We shut down power plants because we were told that energy was coming. Then Ørsted walked away. The projects were canceled. They never delivered a single megawatt. Ørsted had been on the hook for roughly $300 million in guarantees. The state settled for about $125 million, meaning New Jersey taxpayers were on the hook for $175 million. And more importantly, we lost the energy itself. We lost energy capacity because our governor myopically and foolishly bet on New Jersey's grid on a source of power that by every objective metric is less reliable than the nuclear and natural gas plants he'll have to close. Another major offshore green pipe dream wind project, Atlantic Shores, which was supposed to power roughly 700,000 homes in New Jersey, has also pulled back and sought to cancel its contract in New Jersey. And even New Jersey regulators canceled an entire round of offshore wind bidding because the economics collapsed. New Jersey bet on offshore wind, lost, terrible option for our state. But electricity demand didn't collapse, and the grid didn't get new power. So New Jersey left importing more electricity over a constrained PJM grid, constrained system, driving up costs for every employer, every household. And this is exactly why we're here. This is exactly why multi-state cooperation through PJM matters. Our grid doesn't stop at state lines. And when one of our governors dismantles a state's reliable generation and replaces it with political promises that fail and crash and burn, here we are. And our consequences will ripple across the entire grid and will affect each and every one of you. Higher prices, tighter capacity, greater reliability risk for everyone. Our way forward here is practical. It is not politically ideological. We must stop closing reliable power before replacements are built. We must build transmission instead of blocking it. We must support new nuclear and modern natural gas so the grid has firm, controllable power when businesses and families need it most. New Jersey's here today because we want a PJM system that is reliable, affordable, and grounded in reality, and that only happens if we work together across state lines. And unfortunately, the way the governor's race went in our state, our most incoming governor also embraces the concept of RGGI and staying in RGGI. Her opponent did not, and we would have been withdrawn from RGGI, as a matter of fact, this week if we had a different election outcome. Unfortunately, we're saddled with it. We continue to be a strain and a stain on our grid. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fantasia, and I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Mark Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maryland Democrats closed reliable electricity plants. Maryland Democrats closed reliable electricity plants left and right while ramming through policies to electrify everything from cars to home heating. Why would politicians push to force the economy onto electricity while simultaneously shutting down the very power plants needed to generate it? It's simple. Virtue signaling green dreams over common sense reality. They've retired dozens of coal and other plants, delayed the last big one, Brandon Shores, only because PJM warned of blackouts. And now we're importing more power at premium prices while betting the farm on unreliable renewables that don't always show up when the wind dies or the sun sets. And get this, Governor Wes Moore, his administration, and Annapolis Democrats are dead set on banning natural gas options for homes and businesses. The Maryland Department of the Environment and the Public Service Commission are crafting rules and standards like the incoming zero emissions heating equipment standard that will phase out fossil fuel furnaces, boilers, and appliances, pushing everyone toward more expensive electric alternatives. But that didn't stop Governor Moore from cozying up in front of his own burning natural gas fireplace for campaign video. West gets the warm glow of hypocrisy, while Maryland families shiver through winter with skyrocketing electric bills and no affordable gas backup. I guess that's the warmth of collectivism in action. Do as I say, not as I do. It's almost like the Maryland Democrats got their energy policy playbook from the folks running the Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, grifting for their donors. Zero practical solutions. Today, they're scrambling to blame everyone else, PJM, federal policies, even the weather. But let's be real, they're not serious about solutions. 3 years into Governor Wes Moore's term, and he's been more focused on building his national profile than fixing the mess here at home. His administration's green mandates and plant requirements have caused prices to soar, with more price hikes hitting in 2026 from BG&E and others. Families and retirees on fixed incomes are getting crushed, choosing between heating their homes and putting food on the table. Governor Moore has literally run Maryland's energy affordability into the ground. It's time for real leadership that prioritizes reliable, cheap power over ideological experiments. Marylanders deserve better than elite hypocrisy and endless excuses. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. We're gonna now go to the panelists. I'm gonna start with the Executive Director from PJM, Mr. Jason Stanek. And we're sincere when we say we all know what the problem is, but we need to define it better so that the public has a better understanding, and we are here to listen to any solutions that we might be able to help facilitate or at least influence.
Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. I believe this is on. My name is Jason Stanek. I'm Executive Director.
Push the button.
There you go. I'm inside. My name is Jason Stanek, Executive Director of PJM Interconnection. Until recently, many of you may not have heard of PJM, but I suspect that has changed in the past several years. PJM stands for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. We were formed 99 years ago, and we've been serving the state's reliability needs as the bulk system operator since then. We operate 88,000 miles of transmission lines. We have access to 1,400 generation resources. We have over 1,100 members that serve 13 states plus the District of Columbia. We are nonpartisan. We are also fuel neutral. And notably, as a federally designated public utility, we do not operate for any profit. So we're effectively a nonprofit organization. Our job is to keep the lights on for the 67 million people throughout our region through careful technical planning and operation of competitive markets. Some of you have had the opportunity to visit our campus outside of Philadelphia and visit the control room, and if you have not, I would encourage you to do so. Independent grid operators like PJM are required by law to make decisions based on economics and sound engineering. While local utilities are regulated by your state's utility regulator, we are fully regulated by the federal government through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. PJM has been warning for several years now about the prospects that parts of our region could run short on power during high periods of demand. That possibility has been growing, partly due to state and federal policy decisions that are pushing generators to retire prematurely, but also due to unprecedented and rapidly growing demands associated with large customers, including data centers. This growing supply and demand imbalance has resulted in our recent capacity auctions hitting record prices. And the corresponding risk to resource adequacy is not limited to the grid managed by PJM, as we're also seeing this across the country with other grid operators. While our top priority at PJM is to maintain grid reliability 24/7, we also share the concerns regarding affordability that stems from these supply challenges. And we've taken multiple steps over the past year to address those challenges, and we'll be taking more at the end of today. Despite what you may have heard, our interconnection queue is open, and PJM has been processing the connection of new and mostly renewable resources to connect to the grid at record pace. We soon hope to turn around requests in a period of 1 to 2 years, or possibly sooner. Currently, however, PJM has over 63,000 megawatts of projects that have received approvals, but they are not getting developed in time. These are due to factors outside of PJM's control, including delayed siting and permitting at the state level, supply chain challenges, as well as financial issues. However, we at the grid are open to additional solutions as long as they support keeping the lights on. I would say that while local utilities, grid planners, as well as the power generators play a critical role in maintaining grid reliability, state governments are ultimately responsible for resource adequacy. And that is ensuring that the grid has enough power to meet demand in any given period. States are also responsible for setting the retail rates that your customers are incurred from their electric utilities. As such, state legislatures and utility regulators have options when it comes to influencing the retail rates that your utility customers pay. However, ultimately, for the price of utility bills to go down in a meaningful way, the current supply and demand fundamentals will need to return to a more balanced position. Either supply will need to increase or demand will need to decrease. And absent any dramatic changes to these fundamentals in the short term, there are meaningful actions that state policymakers can take that would bring rate relief to utility customers while maintaining grid reliability. And I'd be happy to get into some of those potential solutions. And just in closing, policy takeaways, we would implore all of our states in the PJM region not to retire any more resources until you have a sufficient amount of resources to backfill those retirements. We would also ask that you look at your state permitting laws on the books to determine whether or not we can actually build energy infrastructure in your states in a timely manner. And finally, please consider that any changes to the supply-demand imbalance that would further aggravate this imbalance will result in an increase to customers on their utility rates. Again, thank you for inviting PJM to participate today, and we'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Jason. And just to emphasize something you said we would need more supply or less demand. I think that on the demand side, for us to decrease demand right now is like trying to solve starvation by giving out smaller forks. It's just not going to happen. We need more supply. But now we're going to go to Ms. Diane Holder from Reliability First.
Thank you, Delegate Chisholm, Chairman Morgan, for this opportunity to testify here today. I'm Diane Holder. I'm the VP of Engineering and Strategic Engagement at Reliability First. Reliability First is one of 6 regional entities under NERC. NERC is the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, and together we are responsible for ensuring the reliability and security of the bulk power system. RF's role today is technical. We're not lobbyists. We don't advocate for any particular resource type or any particular policy. At RF, among other things, we ensure utilities, generators, and RTOs comply with NERC's mandatory reliability standards. We also assess reliability, and we share that information with stakeholders. One of the concepts we often talk about is the energy trilemma and the challenge of striking the right balance between cost, environment, and reliability objectives. And while I believe there are choices in how policymakers approach cost and environment, I believe the reliability side of the trilemma is different. It is ultimately constrained by the laws of physics, and those limits surface themselves whether we plan for them or not. And I think that's an important distinction. So with that context, the reliability concerns I'll mention today, they're not new. They are risks that NERC and regions like RF have been tracking closely and communicating broadly over the past few years. But what is different now is that we're beginning to see these risks reflected in real-world events. First, resource adequacy and tightening margins. NERC will soon be releasing their long-term reliability assessment, and it will show that the system is facing a significant shortfall by the end of this decade. Tighter margins is a growing concern, but also the assessments show that this is no longer about a single peak hour. Reliability risk is increasingly showing up across more and more hours of the year. And we've seen this reflected in grid events that occurred during times of more moderate conditions. The Baltimore load shed event last August is one example. That event did not occur on the hottest day of the year, but it did occur in an already resource-constrained area following the loss of critical substation equipment that reduced transmission capability into that area. And ultimately, the situation required some load to be shed in order to maintain reliability across the broader grid. Second, a risk we've talked about is essential reliability services, and of course, as the resource mix changes, many retiring units are being replaced by resources that do not yet provide the reliability services the grid has long relied on. Things like voltage support, frequency response, and inertia. Recent international events, as well as one here in our own country last year, illustrate the importance of these services. In that event, it happened outside of PJM, but a voltage instability issue triggered a load shedding event. Operators had dispatched all available resources, but still needed to shed some load to keep the voltage stable. Third, large loads and large load behavior. Data centers are very large loads. They're in concentrated points on the grid, consuming as much power as a large city consumes, all behind 1 meter. The size of these loads creates enough challenges, but there are operational concerns as well. The 2024 data center event in Virginia illustrated some of those concerns. In that event, 1,500 megawatts of data center load dropped offline almost instantaneously. And from an operational standpoint, a sudden loss of a large load can be just as impactful to the system as a sudden loss of a large generator, which is why operators need visibility into both. There have also been a lot of discussion about load flexibility. And certainly flexibility can be a valuable tool for reliability, not to mention the fact that it may be faster to enable than building new generation or transmission infrastructure. But for reliability, flexibility only helps if it is dependable, locationally aligned with the system needs, and available when the grid needs it the most. We need to consider, is the flexibility voluntary or guaranteed? For example, a large load may be able to choose between curtailing load or paying a higher cost to stay online. If flexibility is not assured during stressed grid conditions, reliability may not be able to be assured either. One final note, if the grid will rely on large load flexibility for years to come, it is important to understand how long those flexibility contracts will last and how they are operationalized and incorporated into system planning. As policymakers consider these issues, maintaining reliability will take continued communication, coordination, and collaboration across states, utilities, RTOs, generators, large load customers, and others. And of course, RF will be happy to continue to be a technical resource for our states. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holder. Now we're going to go on to Travis Fisher from the Cato Institute. I met Travis a couple months ago down at a press conference, or a conference about data centers in Reston, Virginia. I wanted Travis here because it gives a different perspective on, and I mentioned this briefly, we are kind of at a crossroads right now where we can go towards a prosperous, flourishing American economy where everybody gets lifted up or has the opportunity to lift up, or we can continue down this path where we're in decline and we'll be running on more brownouts and living by candlelight. So I definitely wanted you here. I appreciate you being here, and turn it over to you, Travis.
Thank you so much, Delegate. I'm Travis Fisher. I'm the Director of Energy and Environmental Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. Cato is a think tank. We promote individual liberty, limited government, free markets, and peace. And I want to talk about how we can meet the AI moment, because I think what we're seeing now is exposing the flaws of a system that was already pretty sclerotic, pretty slow moving, and we finally have a fast moving US industry that needs more power, and it's the grid that's holding it back. So I think we can unleash American energy abundance to meet the moment. And we are blessed with resources. If you think about where the US stands, we are uniquely good at producing hydrocarbons. We're so good at it that we export from Cove Point, and what we're doing now is taking oil and gas out of shale rock that's over a mile deep, and we are so good at producing that. We are so excellent that we're actually exporting it. What's really holding us back is policy. Entrepreneurs need a stable rule of law, rules of the road. Those keep changing, and I have to commend PJM, and I first met Jason when we were both on staff at FERC, and I can vouch for he's a true public servant. PJM is doing its best. There's a lot of obstacles. We said there's a lot of state policy that's standing in the way. Try to imagine for a moment, though, because I'm going to take a little bit more of a philosophical approach. Try to imagine for a moment having a sit-down conversation with Benjamin Franklin. He's got that lightning rod a few steps away. He was studying electricity. If you could tell him where we are now, that we have an amazing grid, that we have electricity pretty much for everyone, universal service at reasonable rates, and if you told him the thing that was holding back artificial intelligence, you probably have to explain what that is. He would get it because he was psyched. If you explain we're on the cusp of this amazing technology, this AI can do almost anything, and I embrace that. I think it's going to do amazing things. If you told him that all we needed was more electricity supply, I'm pretty sure he would be disappointed at where we are. We need to be more flexible, more responsive. And I think the unleashing the American entrepreneurial spirit is the way to get it. And so what can states do? It's mostly removing the flawed policies that we know that already exist. We need to stop mandating expensive and intermittent energy. Maryland has an offshore wind mandate. We heard from New Jersey, they have targets. This is a fad that needs to go away. You think about what Germany and California have done. Germany is famous for its energy transition. It has deindustrialized itself. We need to look at those lessons and say we don't want that here, not in the state of Maryland. Leave RGGI, of course, but also leave behind this climate ideology, the climate obsession. It's a bag of bricks. We're carrying it around for no reason. We can just drop it. I guarantee you we'll be fine. We need to embrace a high energy future. This is the supply side. I don't want a future where we try to constrain demand. I want a future where we unleash supply. Empower entrepreneurs to build. Make sure we're not getting in the way of them. We need pipes, we need transmission lines, we need all of it. And the private sector is gonna get there. And I do wanna put forth one extra idea, put this on the table, that we're talking about the private sector doing the heavy lifts here. We need to consider that maybe we should allow private networks, private electricity grids, if we have people who want to move so much faster than everyone else at rates that no one else is willing to pay. There are other options on the table. States could allow those large customers to go islanded, and in that way, they would not impact the broader grid, not in the reliability sense, and not in terms of affordability. So, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Thomas Day.
My name is Dr. Thomas Day. I'm currently a professor at the University of Maryland. I'm also a senior federal advisor to Campbell Scientific Technology Company, and up until 16 days ago, I was an employee at NOAA in Silver Spring. And I want to thank everybody for this opportunity to participate, and I also want to recognize Representative Chisholm for his enlightened view of the American power problem and the way that he's actually got it out to the people, and I want you to know we really appreciate you for that. We'll seldom presented are solutions. We hear a lot of the problem. We all know what the problem is, and I think it's been outlined very well articulated here. But I want to put forth the suite of solutions. Tangible things we can do today, right now. And I think Mr. Fisher, you're going to see it, because in the beginning he says, I think we're not going to agree on much, and I think you're going to find that we agree on quite a bit more than you talked about earlier, which I think is pleasantly surprising to you, and certainly a pleasure to make your acquaintance. So here's what we're going to do. We already have Maryland's, heard about Maryland's electric needs. Everybody's outlined it in the different states around it. We're very grateful to you. Solar and wind, already an exciting growing technology. It's not yet suitable for large-scale applications as a 20-year life expectancy, progressively decaying efficiency over time, high maintenance costs, and usually a 45-year return on investment. Remember, the sun doesn't shine at night, and many times no appreciable wind moves those turbine blades, and you actually need about 7.5 miles an hour in order to get the first bit of carrot out of it. And when they tell you got a 100 megawatt turbine, if it's working at 7.5 miles an hour, you're going to get a fraction of that. Nuclear is certainly a national with a 7-year licensing cycle. It's not a short-term solution, although we should be considering it for the very long term. So right now, over 2,000 communities in this nation already own and operate their own power stations. State and local communities can actually build their own power stations at or near their own landfills. They can augment the natural gas systems. Instead of selling it back to the local utility, they can take it to run their turbines and then get the full benefit of that gas. That can be done within a very short period of time. Most of the landfills have sufficient space, and the current turbines today that are available are very clean and very efficient. Now, the fact that they don't necessarily have the necessary technical capabilities on staff, they can use the portfolio of commercialization to assist them. Public-private partnerships, which have been incredibly successful nationwide, will help them in this effort. Privatization will permit the full risk of success transfer to a privatizer, with the government receiving the full benefit. Companies such as Exelon, Constellation, Duke Power, and some of those that are represented here, are all waiting to assist. They just have to be asked. Let these private companies help with the politics, the lobbying, the changes to the laws, and the permitting problems. Let them participate. Empower them to help you do that. Contract-wise, these folks are actually waiting and can help. It should not be on a minority caucus to go in to try to make these changes, which you have done yeoman's work in trying to do. But to get the power of private industry behind you to help you because of the fact that they have this expertise, they have the staffing, and they have the financial means of which to be able to enter and lobby the Maryland Congress here in order to make change, which changes need to be made. Using the commercialization portfolio, all the services required to build and operate these generating stations are provided for on a turnkey basis, or whatever risk is willing the government can tolerate. The fact that we have to change these laws and regulations, they'll be more than willing to participate in any lobbying effort that takes place. Let them handle that for you. Now, one radical solution I'm proposing for these closed power stations is that by eminent domain, because it's a health and safety issue, they can actually reclaim those power stations, pull them under government control, refit them for natural gas, and with the new generating stations, and operate them internally. You can use contract operations as a way of operating them with the skills necessary. Now, it's a very politically sensitive, and I get it, but these are radical times. Radical times do require radical solutions. So, what I've offered today is a brief portfolio of solutions that can be implemented starting today. Literally today. We need to avoid the disasters that California experienced with Enron and Power in 2000. And I worked out in California during 2000 with Duke Power. We were competing against Enron. And we lost. We lost terrible. Couldn't figure out why. And we did figure out why. Which was because they weren't playing by the rules. And they would shut down whole power stations, just what's going on here now, in order to drive prices up into the spot market. And they did it very, very well. We have to avoid that, and we're going to face that this summer. As a matter of fact, personally, I'm going out and buying a generator for my house because I know for a fact that we're going to have a rolling blackout. I implore you to please stop admiring the problem. We've all admired this problem now. Let's take one of these solutions and run with it. Let's put out something to say, how do we get private industry involved? How do we get these power companies into our state and make Maryland fairly power independent and not necessarily have to rely on our neighboring states, our friendly states, but cooperate with them to be able to pass power back and forth as we need it, especially during shutdowns or maintenance, so that there's plenty of power for the upcoming AI revolution and for other industries as they grow into the next generation, into the next decade, and into the next century, which we need to do right now. I thank the committee for its time. I'm open for any questions, and I'm here to help. Anybody just has to ask. I've done this for a living before, back 25 years ago. Willing to start doing it again here in the state because I think it's necessary. It's only a matter of somebody reaching out and saying, we need you now. What can we do? How do we do it? And I'm sure there's a lot of people in here who can certainly help. Sometimes it's just a matter of putting the right seed in the right soil in order to make those plants grow. Thank you for this time, and I appreciate the time of everybody. And we, again, want to thank Representative Chisholm for his enlightened view and for his yeoman's work in making this happen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee has brought many solutions to me, and I had to enlighten him on how things work in Maryland. Solutions don't always fly here. I do want to real quickly just mention that we have been joined by Freedom Caucus member Delegate Robin Grammer, and in the back, Delegate Stuart Schmidt. Right now, we're going to turn this over to questions, and I'm going to start with some of our visitors since they've come so long and braved the cold. On a side note, you guys will be happy to know I put a bill in the drafting to bring back global warming for a statewide initiative. So yeah. I'm going to turn this over right now to, and we've gotten word that they're having a hard time hearing me on the live stream. So when you ask your question, if you can ask close to the microphone, make sure your microphone is on. So we're going to start right now with Representative Josh Kale from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, pull the microphone. So we're not using the iOS system. We have an external mic here. Just speak loud.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you for having this hearing. These issues in Pennsylvania, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have been talking about extensively since I've gotten into the legislature, which was 2019 was my first year, and I get such a kick out of how Democrats now, and the president talks a lot about this, about how they're talking about, all of a sudden they're talking about affordability. Meanwhile, every single one of their policies goes against affordability. It's not just in the energy space, but it's across the board. And here we are in 2026, when there is this shocking demand for electricity. I mean, no one could have predicted that we were going to need a demand for electricity as we go forward. I mean, it's outrageous that they didn't see this sooner, and they're calling for affordability. Not actually doing anything about it, but calling for affordability. It's like the arsonist complaining about the fire. So they started a fire, and now they're looking at the fire and saying, oh man, that would be nice if we could put that fire out. It's just very frustrating. It's very frustrating to see. And coming from Pennsylvania, I'm not as familiar with Maryland and New Jersey, but in Pennsylvania, the fact that there's any type of energy crisis is just complete political malpractice. It is complete political malpractice. With the natural resources that we have, whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas, we even have, in my district, the very first commercially used nuclear power plant up in Beaver County. I mean, we are energy centric in Pennsylvania, and the fact that we're concerned about energy generation is just extraordinarily frustrating. Extraordinarily frustrating, and the solution is quite simple. Just get the hell out of the way. Like, just let industry do what industry does and get out of the way. And that's what built the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and that's why we built the nation, was because of our coal and our steel mills and our ability to generate energy. So it is very frustrating that, again, we're having a hearing on this very important topic, something that we do absolutely need to be talking about. It's just very frustrating that we haven't quite collectively seen the light on this issue. And even though now they're talking about it, I have very strong doubts that anything will actually come of all this affordability talk, other than somehow more giveaways for people that's just going to raise prices on everything else. But with that, I do have a question. I promise I have a question. I had to get that frustration off my chest first. Mr. Stanek, I'd like to direct a couple questions to you. I appreciate what you said, although I would be remiss if I didn't mention that PJM did drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid on this stuff too. And maybe it was a couple years ago, and as of late, they've certainly been more direct and candid about the harm that these bad policies were doing. But there were some issues there. I'm curious. You just mentioned about renewables that were being built and all the different projects that were in the queue. Are there any projects in the queue for any type of fossil fuel thermal production of electricity?
Our current queue, Representative, is overwhelmingly clean and renewable resources. However, we do have a few other thermal projects, including natural gas and a very small number of coal projects in West Virginia. But in excess of 97% of our queue are non-thermal resources.
What can be done to incentivize a company to build a thermal generation as opposed to renewables? And these renewable projects, and I think you mentioned this as well, I'm not convinced they're actually coming. There was 3 of them that were supposed to come to my district. All 3 of them have been withdrawn because the federal government dried up the money for it. I'm curious, what could be done to encourage coal-fired plants to come back, or natural gas plants to come back?
There is no question that HR 1 will have consequences for the renewable energy sector in terms of projects that move forward. Our number 1 tool at PJM is sending price signal, and that price signal is available for generators and project developers to be captured. As I noted, we are fuel neutral, so we look at any resources, and we will take lots of electricity from any resources that are available to produce it. We are not in a position to turn away any available production. So we have that capacity price that you're aware of. That's a signal that we produce through an auction that we've been running every 6 months. But whether it be coal, natural gas, solar, or wind, PJM does not have a particular preference there.
And I appreciate that, but do you have any idea why these companies aren't building thermal production? Is it because of Reggie and us getting out of Reggie? Will we start seeing those projects pop up again?
State policies, no question, influence the types of generation that is built in their state borders. It would be remarkably hard to build, let's say, a new coal plant in the state of Maryland. Perhaps easier in Virginia or the Commonwealth. So state policies at the federal level, of course, EPA level will influence what gets built.
Yeah, and the last question, or series of questions, topic of questions, I guess. I'll make the last question. So you made mention that it's a state's obligation, I think you said to assure reliability or
maintain resource adequacy.
Maintain resource adequacy. There has been a topic that might be a little bit sensitive, and in particular in this room, but it's been a real topic within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania about withdrawing the Commonwealth from PJM. How that would actually work, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the steps that would be taken to do that. Can you help me explain PJM, the makeup of it, and what could be done through our obligation to ensure a reliable grid? I just get frustrated hearing about the policies, and no offense to my friends here from Maryland, New Jersey, but I don't want my constituents to have to deal with Phil Murphy's energy policy. And essentially, that's what's going on right now. And my constituents have to deal with Wes Moore's energy policy and Bill Murphy's energy policy. Why are they paying more in electricity because of the garbage policy that's coming out of New Jersey? Is there a way for us to ratify that, and how would that work?
Thank you, Representative. You could probably understand that having a collective of effectively 14 states with very different policies, the policies of New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland are very different than the policies of Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia. When you visit our control room, you'll see that there are no state boundaries. So we operate effectively one large machine. At the same time, we attempt to balance the state policies within our region, and as you just put your finger on it, it's very difficult to do so. We've been operating the grid for this region for quite some time, and I can tell you at one point when I was the chairman of the Public Service Commission here in Maryland, state legislators would ask me, can Maryland halt out and be its own grid? I said, well, who would operate it? Who would be the control room operator? And they said, well, Jason, you could operate the grid from your offices in Baltimore. That's not exactly how it works. It would be difficult, it would be costly, and it would take a significant amount of time to unwind your position to create a new grid effect.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Representative. Now we go to Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of what I want to ask you about, Jason, is a little bit duplicative, but it's gonna cut through the chaff just a little bit more. And it's two questions, and I'll try to package them well so that you can answer quickly so we can get to some of our other friends. Recently, the Democrat chair of the Energy Committee in the Pennsylvania House had this to say. Second, not enough generation is coming online quickly, enough to meet this increased demand. We know wind and solar projects are the cheapest and fastest energy sources to build. But PJM, our region's grid manager, has moved slowly, effectively blocking nearly 2,000 energy projects from connecting to the grid. 90% of those projects are clean energy sources that could lower costs for taxpayers. So my question here, the first one, has two parts. One, is it true? And I think you've somewhat answered this, but I want to hear it clearly. Are you blocking 2,000 projects? And regardless of that answer, would these wind and solar projects of which the Democrat chair is speaking of solve our resource scarcity problem?
That is not an accurate statement that we are blocking these 2,000 projects. In fact, over the past 2 years, 90% of the projects that we have approved have been clean and renewable projects. Even if we assume that these projects all come online, unfortunately, many of these solar and wind projects, which we value,
have capacity values that are of lower quality than more dispatchable units.
Because they're unreliable, right?
Some of these units may not be able to supply the electricity we need when we need it, particularly during system stress conditions, yes.
Okay, thank you. So my second question is a bit more complicated, but again, I'm gonna try to package it in such a way that we can get to a simple answer that even our constituents can access. It's in the 20s back home today in Pennsylvania. My constituents are calling my office every single day with one issue on their mind, and it's their electric bill. One issue. I'm not hearing about any other social matter. I'm hearing about their electricity bill in the middle of winter. We're going to do something in Pennsylvania to help these constituents. And in a moment, I'll talk about how we ended up getting to Reggie and our abrogation of that. But in Maryland, we have a governor who said that the reason that people's electricity bills are so high is because the electric utilities are greedy and they're the ones raising your rates, which absolutely fundamentally misunderstands the problem that we are in an energy deficit right now, that we need to be building as quickly as we can build because today's prices are already reflecting tomorrow's reality, that we are at resource scarcity, That's what the capacity market is measuring, is people's future ability to promise to have electricity deliverable. And the consequence of Maryland's policies are Pennsylvania's capacity prices in that first astronomical auction went up more than 800%. Maryland's went up 1,500% until the governor of Pennsylvania sued PJM and got price caps installed temporarily, and then we got a price call. We're all bearing the consequences of bad energy policy. And that's why Pennsylvania overwhelmingly passed a bipartisan measure during the budget process to get us out of Reggie so that we can start building electricity again. We're not going to sit and provide cheap natural gas electricity production to a state that claims moral virtue by being claimed when they import 40% of their needed electricity. I'm talking about Maryland. So my question is, we left Reggie because we see data centers, electrification, and the electrification of our economy as being the next boom for our state. The next boom for our state. If we just get out of the way, as the other gentleman said. The question then becomes, how do Pennsylvanians first reap the benefit of that economic boom? If we're going to have an energy gold rush in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvanians ought to benefit first. My ratepayers in Delaware and Chester County ought to benefit first. And if that's true, and we, for example, withdraw from PJM, we'll let you handle the grid, but you're going to buy your power from us directly. And the first people to benefit is the Pennsylvanian. What happens to Maryland and New Jersey? Economic is a matter of simple economics. What happens to them for their bad energy policy?
It's not only a matter of economics, but it's a matter of physics. We have only limited transmission lines between the Commonwealth and the state of Maryland, and that has resulted in transmission constraints in Maryland, particularly in the Baltimore Gas Electric Zone, which caused that zone to separate in a recent capacity auction. There is no question that Pennsylvania is our powerhouse in terms of energy exports. We're also very aware that the Commonwealth, last summer, it was announced that $91 billion of investments in data center and high-tech industry will be moving to the Commonwealth. And they're tracking that because you have those resources available and high-quality access to electricity.
And remove the threat of bad policy.
And that as well. So it's something that we contemplate. We try to balance the policies at the border between Pennsylvania and Maryland. Obviously, they're vastly different. And over the past year, we had to engage in out-of market because at the end of the day, we try to run competitive wholesale markets. But when you have out-of-market actions, such as collars and caps, such as reliability must-run units, such as emergency actions that the Department of Energy is taking to keep units alive for 90-day periods. it makes our job in the control room that much more difficult to get effective, cost-efficient outcomes that ultimately make its way to your utility bills.
Thank you very much for the answer. And Mr. Chairman, I'll just wrap up with this. If it's true that we're about to have an energy gold rush in Pennsylvania, and we are prepping our literal and economic landscape for that moment, I think it's imperative on us in office, since you said the governments have primary responsibility over resource adequacy. We have the resources. We have been putting them on the market in an inadequate way, in my opinion, to protect my ratepayers. And it's time, you said that PJM's been in existence for 99 years, I think it's time that we break the wheel. I don't know what that means yet, but I do know that we're gonna study leaving PJM and finding out what is going to be the best economic solution for Pennsylvania and its ratepayers. And my good friend in the Maryland Senate, who says that Maryland has turned into a transmission state, I think that ought to be a warrant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Williams. New Jersey's starting to feel lonely, so I'm going to turn over a couple questions to them. Representative Greg Meyer from New Jersey.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you for hosting this again today. I'm a Jersey guy, but I'm also a graduate of the University of Maryland, so I can go right at home. I'm sorry. And thank you to the panelists as well. So we have heard a lot from Pennsylvania about being a resource-rich state. They also have quite a bit of land compared to a state like ours, like New Jersey, like Maryland, which can affect things like suitable sites for power plants. I like what I heard. Your philosophy, Travis, on a free market being in charge. I think that's really how we got here in the first place, where we live in an electrified society. It wasn't government bureaucrats sitting around thinking who they could find from their ideas. It was private sector innovation that brought us where we are today. Private sector innovation is what's going to pull us out of this. But I think as policymakers, what I'd like to see is look at what's worked and what's failed. So New Jersey, you heard about the failures of offshore wind. That's something that literally didn't even get off the ground, but we had to dump hundreds of millions of dollars into it. In my own district, Oyster Creek nuclear power generating station, it was the oldest one in the country, operated for 49 years. It had a license to operate for another 20 years. Had to close early because the DEP wanted to have to build a new cooling tower at a cost of about $900 million. With the rates they had about 10 years ago, they said it was not economically viable, so they shut it down. It's now in the process of decommissioning. So that was essentially government intrusion into a plant that was functioning, that was working. Was working out on the West Coast, the Ivanpah, I think it's called, solar generating facility. $2.2 billion, just completed in 2013. $1.6 billion in federal loan guarantees. That's shutting down this year, 13 years early. So it's, again, government-funded projects to solve our energy problem, our climate crisis, as they talk about, and they're just simply not working. They're not getting off the ground. That plant is now being run with natural gas. So I only bring these up because I want to see anybody on the panel what your thoughts might be on the most, the cheapest, fastest way to build a power plant that has the least amount of red tape regulation. So if you have any thoughts on that, because I think we're going to have to get to that point, because you mentioned, Professor, that we are going to see blackouts. You're buying those generators. What can we do to get cheaper, smaller plants built as quickly as possible?
The very fastest way right now, because of the heavy regulations, is getting the private industry involved. Let them do the lobbying. They will very happily, if they know there's money at the end of the line, if they know they're going to get a contract to build a plant or plants or some sort of business in that line, they will very happily lobby, invest money in the politics in order to change laws. We did it back when I worked for American Water and Duke Power. It's a known practice. They have lobbyists, and these lobbyists are very heavily tied into these legislators. And let them help make the change. You can't have a minority group like this expecting to make change. They should be handed the solutions to say we can help. They've done doing this work, but this goes for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, even at the national level. Let the lobbyists do the work for you. Support them, but get the lobbyists involved from these companies.
So you're suggesting we should contact our energy lobbyists?
Constellation, Exelon, people who are here, absolutely. These are the experts. They're the best in the business. They're the best in the world. Let them help you. First, have a chat with them. Hear what they have to say. You'll get more information out of them within 15 minutes than trying to get a hold of people at the legislature level and say, what do we have? Say the information that Representative Chisholm has, because he's put out so much, I don't think most people read it or can understand it. But he's put out a very complete package on the matter, which I'm very pleased at. But the point of the matter is, let private industry help you. Private industry is what grew this country. It wasn't the government. Consider the government as like a stadium. And inside the stadium, there's all sorts of sports going on. Government should be out to support that. But private industry are the ones that are in there doing the work. Let private industry come in and talk to them. Talk to every one of them. Every one of them will come in to your office. They will sit with you. They will outline what they think will work. You can take data points from there, develop a plan that is specific to your specific needs. That's the fastest way. Now, technology-wise, natural gas is the best way, and these plants that are down, especially the coal plants, they can be retrofitted in approximately 6 months to run natural gas. And we use it in our homes, so you know how much emissions out of it. And you can put scrubbers on the top of it so that the CO2, but I don't, the CO2 stuff, plants need the CO2, so CO2 is really a problem. We'd have monster plants in the world, which we do not. As a matter of fact, they're dying for a lot of other reasons. But you can put scrubbers on them for that matter in order to meet the regulations. There's always a way around it. What we have to do is get the people who are the experts. And I don't mean to take the track of anybody here, please understand that. But these private companies make a business. They are experts in these fields. They make a tremendous amount of money at it because they're so good at it. Bring them in and talk to them. Get their opinions. Hear what they have to say. And I think you're going to be enlightened by the story they'll tell you and guide you with in order to start with these solutions. That's the fastest way.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice. We just got through our lame duck session in New Jersey, over 120 bills, maybe more than that. Yeah, more. It was maybe 150. It was a lot. Anyway, the only bill related to energy on there was just to study the possibility of putting SMRs statewide. But nothing. $300 million to renovate the Prudential Center in Newark for a hockey team. Nothing to go towards actual power plant construction. So they need some lobbyists in there, like the Prudential Center.
Oh, I love the Prudential Center Wells, matter of fact. I went to Stevens. I was driving to Stevens Institute, so I know about it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. I'm going to now call on our Senate Minority Leader, Mr. Steve Hershey from Maryland, for his question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, thank you to everyone that attended here, and especially thank you to our panelists. Mr. Stanley, I want to focus on you because I just want to commend you for doing such a wonderful job at these summits and hearings that we've had a number of times to come representing a group that's under attack. And they're under attack by Democrat leaders that do not want to take blame themselves for their energy policies that have created the crisis that we're in, but would rather blame you and your industry and your company at PJM. And you've come out over and over again and told the very difficult truth that states like New Jersey and Maryland are facing an immediate energy crisis. And I commend you for saying that because I know that's not difficult, but please, on behalf of all of us, continue to say that because, as you mentioned, it might not be a minority group like us that can do something right away, but I think the longer we continue to talk about these issues, energy prices is one of the biggest issues that we see on top of, with respect to affordability throughout the country right now. And we have people here all the time that want to talk and want to know what somebody is doing about energy prices. And thank you to this group for putting this hearing together to say, at least we're looking at it, and we're looking at it in a way that is going to, ask a lot of difficult questions. And again, Mr. Stanek, I appreciate you bringing your expertise and answering those for us. Interestingly enough, right now, just this morning, the governor of Pennsylvania and Maryland were just in the White House. And of course, there was a conversation about PJM there as well. The Trump administration has come out with something that they believe we need to focus on as well, the same thing that we're all talking about, and that's increasing generation in the PJM region. And they've come with another two things. This is recent news that they also are talking about imposing a cap on residential energy prices. So to again address the affordability concern that most people are seeing right now, making data centers pay for their own energy generation, which most adequately and quickly get online. But they also said, you know, that they had to focus on all types of energy generation. Not surprisingly, Maryland's governor contrasted with President Trump, as he does almost every opportunity, and says, okay, we'll focus on energy generation, but we're still going to stick with wind, solar, and nuclear 15 years from now, whenever that gets there. So what we were hoping would be a good response from Maryland's governor was actually just an expected response from Maryland's governor. But I do want to just ask one question, because again, Mr. Tenney, you know that you've been here in front of committees that handle energy policy for many periods of time, and you mentioned something that's been brought up that, you know, completely surprisingly and unexpectedly, how could Maryland possibly talk about leaving PJM? You know, we're the center state of the PJM region, and we're going to think about, you know, come up with ideas on how we can leave PJM, and again, get supplied by who? But not surprisingly, there's 2 bills that have already been put in this year. We haven't had hearings yet, but they want to require a joint study between MEA, Maryland Energy Administration, and our Public Service Commission on how to withdraw from PJM. So we're going to see that this year. We're going to see people that are, you know, Democrat leaders that are going to come in for a committee testimony and say, we should study leaving PJM, leaving the capacity markets, and establishing an independent RTO. Now, I'm hoping you're available that day, Mr. Stanek, to come down and bring the voice of reason that we so sorely need here in Annapolis with respect to some of the Democrat policies that we're seeing. But let's take it a step further, and I appreciate my comments from Representative Williams, and he and I have served on a number of national organizations with respect to energy supply and things like that, so we've been talking for a number of years. But what if the opposite really did occur? Those questions that we've heard. What if Pennsylvania did truly say, you know what, we are an energy generating state, and we have the natural resources, i.e. gas with Marcellus Shale, to allow us to produce maybe endless amounts of energy, and use that as a commodity. So Florida sells tourism, right? And they're talking about right now lowering property taxes in Florida. What if Pennsylvania decided to say, you know what, we sell energy, and we're going to take ourselves out of the grid, and we're going to take ourselves out of capacity markets, and you can buy energy from the state of Pennsylvania as you choose. And maybe that goes along with, we could lower property taxes in Pennsylvania, we could lower income taxes in Pennsylvania, we could lower sales taxes in Pennsylvania, because we now have a commodity that all other states need, because their policies have not let them generate electricity. What if that were the case on why Pennsylvania decided to do it, rather than what my colleague says is, hey, because we have decided, Maryland's decided not to generate electricity, it's making it more expensive for Pennsylvania residents and utility bill holders, rather than trying to use that as a commodity.
Well, Senator, PJM has been on record for some time publicly that states such as Maryland, that import nearly 40% of its daily electricity needs, sorely lacks energy infrastructure, whether it be transmission or generation. You could probably get by with one or the other. Ideally, you would need both. You noted the potential study of exiting PJM in Maryland. It would also be exceedingly difficult for a state that relies on other states in our market to go it alone. With a market, you need buyers and sellers. If you just have a buyer such as Maryland, it's hard to make that market. If we play out your scenario, and the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania operates its own grid with its own rules, obviously it could better capitalize on its resources as a large energy producer, and effectively name their price when selling to their neighboring states. You are aware that there are 3 states in the country that do operate their own grids: New York, California, and Texas.
So it's possible. It's not something that couldn't happen. Obviously, we are, Maryland is the beneficiary of being part of an RTO that has energy supplier, energy generators in it. While we have, Democrats, have created policies that have made generation lead. There's one other question to go about, I just follow up, because again, I think we are looking for really what we can find is short-term solutions as well too. You know, the Senate President spoke last night about, well, we plan to give rebates back again. You know, for those that don't know, they passed a piece of legislation that they actually called it the Legislative Relief Plan. And they gave back, there was about $230 million of overpayments through the ACP because of our RPS. And the Democrat leaders decided to give, I think it was $92 back to each residential ratepayer, $92. That was the legislative relief plan. So we're trying to do something a little bit better that will help drive down prices. But the question was brought up, you know, what is the quickest way to get energy generation back online? And there are 6 or 7 thermal generation facilities that have closed down over a period of time. Can they be brought back online sooner than anything else? Obviously, there are concerns about EPA standards, air quality permits, things of that nature. Is there a reality to try to really repurpose those? Maybe it's natural gas. We got rid of, you know, didn't go the direction of coal. Could those come back online sooner than anything else?
That conceptually would be one of the quickest ways to get generation that's not currently existing on the system back if we could bring these units that have recently retired back into a state of repair. Obviously, there's discussion between Microsoft and Constellation bringing back 3 Mile Island, right, after a long period of dormancy. There are opportunities in your state as well to do that. So the state, none of your states are without tools and options to look at to increase generation, to look at the total utility bill, and see the line items. There are some line items that the state completely controls. As a former state regulator, all the distribution line items, taxes, energy taxes, county taxes, and power fees, all within state control there. In response to the conversation with Pennsylvania, being a part of a market, sometimes you have to take the good and the bad of all the state policies being considered together. But we've estimated our value proposition annually to the states is in the neighborhood of about $5 billion through economic dispatch, central planning of the grid as well. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. But yes, Senator, there are options to get generation online quicker, whether it be retired units, whether it be streamlining, so we could get CPCNs in Maryland much faster than years and years from the time a developer generation or transmission files to the time they receive that CPCN. Currently, not only Maryland but other states, the siting and permitting processes just go on for an interminable period.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your honesty and truthfulness here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Senator. So we're going to have a hard stop in about 3 minutes, and this is the hardest thing in the world for legislators to do, but I want you to keep your questions very fast, your answers even faster. So we're going to have 2 questions. We're going to start with Representative Dawn Fantasia, and then we're going to finish up with Delegate Brian Rocky. But Representative Dawn Fantasia from New Jersey.
Thank you. I will be quick. As Senator Hershey said, New Jersey is also must have fallen and hit their head on the way out by thinking that we are studying, there's Democrat legislation proposed to study our exit from PJM or perhaps merging with New York, because New York has always treated us so fairly with congestion pricing, etc. But we'll put that away. And then to address Representative Williams' concerns as well, I understand that it is very, very unfair that the policies of our governor are doing that to you. So quickly, how that ties into my question ties back to Senator Hershey. When we talk about the kinds of power that would be available, quickly available to us, but reliability, we're talking reliability only. We have green dreams in New Jersey, wind, solar, batteries, unicorns, I don't know what they think is good power our grid. From your perspective, what is the most reliable power that's easily accessible so a state like New Jersey can get its act together and start contributing instead of taking?
Yeah, that's a hard question. We're not magicians at PJM. The problem is that even building a combined cycle gas plant, which you previously could have done in 3 years, now takes 5 to 7. We rank all of our resources in terms of capacity and their ability to serve the grid. Nuclear units are the gold standard. Solar is towards the bottom there. You can build solar relatively quickly, but you can't build nukes quickly. So there is no silver bullet. To the extent we can approve projects, get them sited and permitted, it'll take a number of years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fantasia. And we're going to finish with Delegate Ryan Araki from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will keep it very quick. So, for y'all that don't know, I have 6 children. I love a good fairy tale. We get a lot of these in Annapolis. We're told that all fuel sources are created equal, but I really want to drill down very quickly, looking at levelized cost of electricity generation without subsidies, including system costs. I want to do a quick 1 through 7 ranking. I want to look at nuclear, coal, wind, and I want to separate that out between onshore and offshore wind and solar. So any on the panel, can you give me 1 being the least expensive, 7 being the most expensive? Could someone please put that in order for me of where that falls, please? Including natural gas in there. Sorry if I didn't mention that as well.
Yeah, so the very short answer is the levelized cost is not, it doesn't fully capture all of the costs because you still have an intermittency problem. So what I would look at is the system LCOE of a given resource, and the intermittent ones are the worst because then you have to back it up with batteries or other expensive means.
Okay, but look, anyone, 1 through 7, like what's the cheapest, what's the most expensive? Like let's put them in order, and I want to separate out wind because we are told the story in Maryland all the time that offshore wind and onshore wind are the same costs. So I just would love someone to give me a 1 through 7 that are costs of those different fuel types.
Well, that is a much more apples to apples comparison. Onshore wind is about 1/3 the cost of offshore wind.
Yeah, and it's a bit of an unfair question, only for the fact that distance has a lot to do with electricity. So, a nuclear plant is certainly the cheapest, but you have the longest life cycle. Gas right now is more effective because there's so much of it. Coal is probably the cheapest, but you're permitting. So, it's a loaded, unfortunately, it's a loaded question.
So Senator Sparrows, all things being equal, your house is right next door to a power plant, taking everything else being equal, of those fuel types, where would you rank those in terms of costs?
Natural gas, coal, and nuclear falls right in the middle of that.
So wind would not be the cheapest is what you're telling me?
Oh, God, no.
Okay, thank you. And how about solar?
Again,
unsubsidized.
Don't even go there. Remember, it's a 20-year life cycle that decays with a 45 ROI.
Right.
There's no question about it.
The math doesn't math.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I just want to thank everybody for being here. My phone is going nuts with people that want to ask questions, and I appreciate that. It's more questions than I get from my wife before we go on vacation. But it represents how important this issue is, because energy drives everything, and I mean everything. It is the future, or it's the failure of this country going forward. And it is vitally important. Unfortunately, I think that you're sitting in a room full of people that can say we're going in the wrong direction. So we need to change something up and start to move in the right direction. And the only way we're going to do that is to start to collaborate with other states in the Mid-Atlantic, because we are all connected for right now until Pennsylvania gets her way and separates from us. But it is one of those issues that is bipartisan. My phone rings off the hook with people upset about their bills. And you know who it hurts first? The poorest among us. Baltimore City, we have people living on life machines dependent on electricity. And we have a governor that seems to say we don't give a crap because the green goddess is who we bow down to here. And nobody in here believes that. But we got to work together to get that message and that voice out so we can reverse engineer how policy is made and get the public to the point where they understand why we got here and how we get out, because they can't afford it anymore. With that, I want to thank you all for being here. We're going to now move over to room 180 for a press conference. Everybody is welcome to go over there. And if I know the legislators that didn't get a chance to answer a question, maybe somebody will ask you a question and we can go with it from there. We're going to immediately go to room 180. With this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
We'll need about 5 minutes for the cameras to resituate and be used the bathroom.
Thank goodness. Hey, Lauren, you guys do a hearing?
Dave, sir, so when we do